Hello, my name is Eduardo Longo and I'm going to talk about the knowledge management role in mitigating operational risk. This is a shorter version of the presentation I made at the European Conference on Intellectual Capital 2009. Let's start with some history. In January 1986, the Challenger disaster terrified the world. This accident was caused by two rubber O-rings that leaked after the launch. The previous day, engineers at the rocket maker were concerned with damages to the O-rings due to the low forecasted temperature for the launch. They presented the evidence of this risk in 13 charts that were sent to NASA officials, who pointed out many weaknesses. Finally, there was an agreement that the evidence was inconclusive. Edward Tufte discusses this case in his book Visual Explanations. For him, the engineers reached the correct conclusion, but failed to present the evidence effectively. Consequently, they couldn't avoid a decision with catastrophic consequences. Tufte stresses that no one of those 13 charts depicted clearly the relationship between temperature and O-ring damage, though they had all the necessary information to do this. Tufte believes that a better information design could reveal the risk to the launch. This graph shows that the O-rings were damaged in every launch below 66 Fahrenheit degrees. The forecasted temperature for the launch was below 30 degrees. That's an excellent example of how intangible assets influence risk events. We live in a world where intangible assets are increasingly important, and they are important because they do create economic value. On the other hand, they also pose risks if poorly managed. Our proposal is to integrate the knowledge management and the operational risk management perspectives, and the way to do this is twofold. Firstly, we should think about how information and knowledge create the possibility of operational risk events. Secondly, we should think how they could be used to avoid these events. Keeping this in mind, we have developed a matrix that connects operational risk drivers with information-related and knowledge-related events. Then we list likely effects of these events in a business perspective. It's not supposed to be a comprehensive matrix, and it must be adapted by each organization that adopts this approach. Now let's talk about what can be done from an information management perspective. Information is definitely an asset of the organization, but it's a particular kind of asset that has no intrinsic value but is part of operational processes. Thus, we must assure that the information has the necessary quality and availability and is designed in a way that favors understanding and decision-making. We can go one step further and create a matrix that relates which pieces of information are available to the company and which are available to competitors. Doing this will make clear which pieces of information should be protected because create competitive advantage and which should be obtained in an attempt to reach competition or overtake it. Thinking from a knowledge perspective, there are three things that should be done. The first one is trying to avoid loss of organizational knowledge. The second one is dealing with barriers to knowledge creation. Lastly, there is the risk of losing relative competitive advantage. Lack of mentoring programs, no effort to foster collaboration in knowledge sharing, and industrial espionage are some examples of the challenges we face here. We believe that this integrated approach has clear benefits for all stakeholders. The CKO will profit from a clear connection to a business driver. The CRO will develop a broader understanding of risk events. And the company will profit from an interdisciplinary approach and the optimization of investments and efforts. I will use the Cinefin framework developed by David Snowden in my final words. We are discussing a complex context, not only because companies are becoming more complex, but also because we are discussing intangible assets and possibilities. Therefore, we must recognize that it's only the first step towards a really integrated model, and no best practice is available. However, we must start acting in this direction because it's not only coherent but also necessary in our current economic system. Thank you very much for your attention and email me if you have any question.